Welcome everyone to the LinkedIn Content Marketing Lab. I'm Alex Durin and I'm your moderator today. I'm joined by my incredibly savvy content marketing colleagues, Mutesi Nzinda and Rachel Rickles. Today's class will cover the fundamentals of content marketing on the LinkedIn advertising platform. Our goal for this class is for you to walk away with a strong foundation to be successful with your content strategy. Some of the things we'll cover today for your content marketing strategy are how to make an editorial calendar, a full funnel strategy, how to stand out in the newsfeed, different content formats, distribution, A/B testing, and more. Before I jump into our presentation, I want to cover a couple of housekeeping items. So the platform that we are using today is Slido, and this is an overview of what your screen looks like on your desktop. You can ask the speakers questions using the box on the right of your screen, and you can also upvote other participants' questions. We'll take time after each section to cover the top questions. We'll also be asking a bunch of poll questions throughout the class, and you can use the box on your right as well to answer those questions. We've also included a downloadable version of the slides, so you can find them on the left side of your screen under the agenda highlighted in the red box like you see on your screen. A couple of things to note, we're going to take a short break about halfway through to give you some time to grab coffee, use the restroom, scroll through your LinkedIn feed for the latest updates, whatever it is that you'd like to do during that time. We'll also be sending a recording of this presentation to you via email in the next couple of days. Also, prizes, we have them, and we're very excited to give them away. We're giving away 3 Rock Your Video packages to the most active users. The package includes a tripod, a selfie stick, a light, so you'll have everything you need to produce high-quality video for your LinkedIn ads. You can earn points by asking questions and upvoting other people's questions and participating in the poll questions. We'll announce the winners at the very end. And lastly, there is a survey at the end. We'd love to know if you're enjoying this, and we'd love to get your feedback and your suggestions. But first, I want to take a moment to introduce my colleagues here and give everyone a chance to share something that's not on their LinkedIn profile. Rachel, do you want to go first?
Sure. So I am Rachel Rickles. I am a content marketing evangelist. And that's really just a fancy way of saying that I help our clients with content marketing. Something that is not on my LinkedIn profile. I actually raised pigs in high school. I grew up in Phoenix, Arizona. So not like out in the middle of nowhere, but yeah, I raised pigs in high school.
That's amazing. I did not know that about you. Right. I have some follow-up questions, but I'll save them for later. All right, Mutesi.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Mutesi Nzinda, and I'm a Client Solutions Manager. So when you're thinking about getting started with your LinkedIn advertisements, I'd be your go-to person for strategy, targeting, audiences, everything you need. So something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is I was actually a professional sailor all my life until I was 18. Unfortunately, I realized I probably wasn't going to the Olympics, so here I am.
Well, we're glad to have you. Their loss. And I'm Alex Durin. I'm a content marketing manager here at LinkedIn. I've been here for over 3 years, creating content to help marketers, inspire marketers to be more effective on the platform and just understand how to best use our products. But first things first, we're super curious to learn more about you. So we want to know what city you're joining us from, and we'll give you a couple of seconds to respond, and then we'll kind of discuss the results.
And so Mutesi, you grew up as a sailor. Where did you grew up on a coast then?
So in Toronto, we're on a big lake, Lake Ontario. So for those Americans out there, it's right just north of Rochester, New York.
So we've got another Toronto.
Yeah.
Big Toronto presence.
A lot of Toronto.
So that's where I grew up to sail. And just further actually up that coast is where we hosted the Olympics when it was in Montreal.
Awesome.
Yeah.
London.
A lot from London, yeah.
Great to see a global scene. You know what I realized? I didn't say something that's not on my LinkedIn profile. So something that's not on my LinkedIn profile is that I've actually hosted a couple of these marketing labs and our Live with Marketers series, which is separate, and I always wear a jacket. I'm like the jacket queen. It's like something I'm known for. So this is my first show that I'm hosting where I'm not wearing a jacket. So as you know,
Brave new world.
Marketers are ever evolving, and so is my style.
I love it.
So lots of Toronto, London, lots of the Bay Area. We got in a lot of New York. This is awesome.
Some Canadians. Hello, fellow Canadians.
Sao Paulo, all over the world. Great.
Yeah. Okay, so our agenda, why we're here. We went through introductions. I'm going to pass it over to Rachel in a second, so she's going to talk about why we're here today, talk about how to develop breakthrough content. Then we're going to take our break, like I mentioned, talk about distribution strategies and video, and then we'll have a Q&A. So Rachel, passing it over to you to talk about why we're here today.
All right, fantastic. Thank you, Alex. Why are we here today? We are here because content marketing is the only marketing that's left, according to Seth Godin. But when we actually do think about the marketing that we engage with on a regular basis, we do find that content marketing is really high up there. And we also see that if we do a Google Trends report, we can see that content marketing has significantly increased in popularity over time, especially in the last 5 years. So people really like content. And we can see that actually through the Content Marketing Institute study, their B2B trends that they do every year, because we see that more companies are producing more content. We see that the percentage of B2B marketers using content marketing has increased year over year. It's about 90% now. And that the expected change in B2B content creation is increasing year over year. So more companies are producing more and more content. And really the reason for that, why we see this trend year after year after year, is because we're seeing that as marketers, our world has been disrupted. Our audiences are consuming more content before they ever actually reach out to us, before we ever find out anything about them. They are consuming this content throughout their entire buyer journey. And we can see that about 10 pieces of content are consumed in this journey that they're on. And really that's because that everything is so accessible to them now through search, social, and mobile. We can really get whatever content we want at any point in time through any channel that we want it, mainly because we have these tiny computers that we carry with us everywhere we go. But we see that those brands that have really embraced content marketing, that have said we're going to fully embrace this idea and this practice, have seen success. GE has seen that content marketing generates 30% higher returns versus other marketing channels or tactics. So we're seeing that as a huge success there. So content marketing is huge for GE. With American Express, their Open Forum. So for those of you unfamiliar with Open Forum, it's their blog that's focused on small business owners and entrepreneurs. They have found that Open Forum is their #1 source of leads, which is just a content marketing portal, really. It's just a hub for these audiences that are really important to their business. And then finally, TD Ameritrade. They have found that those audience members that subscribe to Think Money, which is actually a hard copy magazine, trade at a 5 times higher rate than those that don't. Now, the reason why that's so important to TD Ameritrade is because they make money on every single trade. And so if they're trading at a higher rate, then they're more valuable to them as a company. So those that have done content marketing really well have seen a lot of success from it. Unfortunately, most of us are struggling with content marketing. Again, with the Content Marketing Institute report, we have seen that most marketers are only kind of successful with content marketing. And that's really because there's a lot of new challenges that we're facing on a regular basis. Producing engaging content is the #1 challenge that marketers face. And I think that's really true across a lot of the clients that I've worked with here at LinkedIn. But also for many of you, I'm sure. We also find that measuring content effectiveness, as well as producing content consistently, are some big challenges that marketers face today. Now, what I'd like to hear from actually the group, so that we can try to talk about it a little bit here, is what are some of the challenges that you're facing when developing content? But for now, I'm going to actually turn it over to Alex, since you're on our content marketing team here at LinkedIn. What are some of the challenges that we face at LinkedIn when producing content?
Yeah, I think our team has so many great ideas that it's trying to focus on doing fewer things better actually at the moment. We get really inspired and excited about things, but like as a marketer, you can be busy all day, but if you're not busy doing the right things, then you're not doing your job as well. So that's one of the things that we think about a lot, and we're also thinking about, I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but just letting our content breathe a little bit more. So we're always like, we drop a campaign and then we're like on to the next thing, and we just we don't take the time to like measure it as well as we should be afterwards. So that's something that we're working on focusing on.
That's a great point.
Taking a time to stop and think about how effective it was and let it inform your strategy moving forward.
Absolutely. So going back to some of these poll questions here, Getting other teams to approve content, that's definitely one that we hear as well. Bandwidth for content creation, time and resources. Creating different content for for different customers within the buying journey. We're going to actually talk about full funnel, my favorite topic, here in just a little bit. But would love, Mutesi, maybe you can help answer some of these questions that people are having or some of the challenges that they're facing.
I saw one that popped up a little bit ago. I'm a one-man show, so that's something that I often see from some of my marketers. So in that case, how can we repurpose some of our organic social, content that we've had across different networks, or things that are actually on our website that we can repurpose using a lot of really cool free tools that we talk about a little bit later in the session. So those are the kind of ways that we can help them. I've even gone in and actually created some of them for them and just repurposed some of their data. So talk to your social team at LinkedIn if you need help as well.
Yeah. So there's also definitely some, content creative or creation agencies that are out there that exist. The other thing that I would highly recommend if you're not currently doing it for those that are strapped for resources is leverage your employees. Get their point of view, hear from them. Take a cell phone and record them, because that's a really authentic, genuine way of showcasing some of the challenges that we're facing in everyday life and everyday offices. So that's always something to consider when thinking about being strapped for time and resources. Great. Do we have some questions, Alex?
Yes, let me take a look. All right, we do have a lot of questions.
And thank you for those that participated in the poll. Really appreciate your candor.
Yes. So one of the ones that's been upvoted the most is, do you see the same trends between B2C as you do in B2B?
That's great. Well, so before we went live today, we were actually talking about H to H
Yep.
and the human to human element. More and more marketing today is focused on the human side of things, not just B2B or B2C, but tapping into the emotions, tapping into the challenges and the pain points, and what is it that your audience really cares about, and then addressing that through your content.
Yes, definitely. And I think, it's just so important to remember that, there is a human on the other end. We are the people that we're marketing to. I think we talked about this a little bit during the break, and we'll talk about it later. But definitely, I think a lot of B2B companies feel like they're struggling to tell their genuine, authentic, emotional story the same way that B2C companies can. So that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit later. Another question. Some of these we're going to cover later. So
Stay tuned.
All right. So what was your first aha moment with each of you as you first started creating marketing campaigns? So maybe just like a tip from your early marketing campaign days.
Ooh. Testing, I think, was the big one for me. Is, my early days, I was actually doing live events, and that was like the big one for me. Was every audience is going to be different, and so making sure that you're testing out the channels that you're running on, the verbiage that you're using, that all makes a big difference. And so I think testing was kind of the aha, that that's what needs to happen when you are to be successful.
Yeah.
Tessie, what about you?
And then for me, a lot of it has to do with actually talking about thought leadership and having to actually sell that story to senior executives at my previous companies. So it isn't just about sort of a lower funnel strategy, which Rachel's going to go into detail later, but actually what we talked about, human to human, that thought leadership at the top, and sort of making yourself an industry expert in that vertical and sort of providing real value to them outside of your product or service.
I think just for myself, one of the things that I realized too is that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. Like, we're always trying to think of like the next biggest campaign, or how we can grab people's attention. But we have tons of great existing content that maybe we can just repackage into other content formats. So that's something we're going to talk about a little bit later when we get into the distribution side of things. Let's see. I think we have time for one more. There is a content question about what types of content are most effective at different stages of the funnel. And that's actually something that we're going to talk about perfectly. in an upcoming section. So I will pass it back to Rachel for the time being. To talk about breakthrough
Awesome.
content.
But please do keep the questions coming because we'll answer them as we go through some of this too, hopefully. So love that you guys are engaged. Thank you so much. In the meantime, let's talk about breakthrough content. So when we talk about breakthrough content, we're really talking about how do we get our audiences really engaged with the content that we're creating, the content that we want our audiences to see. We're going to start with why LinkedIn. I'm sure the fact that most of you are here today, you know why LinkedIn, but I'm just going to hammer it home. So when we think about the LinkedIn member mindset, we see that it is quite different from some of our other social friends out there. When we see Twitter, for example, and their top trending content or topics, we see that we have National Pasta Day. Fantastic. Who doesn't love pasta? But it's definitely not in that business mindset. So taking a look at LinkedIn, we see things that are more business-minded, meaning things that are industry-specific, trends, topics that other professionals might care about. Retirement is in here as an example. Things that are going to impact the economy. So these are all really great ideas on topics that should be considered when thinking about posting on LinkedIn. We also see that engagement on the platform continues to rise. So members that are engaging with the newsfeed is growing more than 50% year over year. So that's a huge number. The newsfeed is a really critical part of an everyday member's news intake, right? So the first thing that you do on the bus, let's say, is you get onto your LinkedIn app and then you scroll through the newsfeed to see what you should be learning about for the day to come. We also see that engagement has increased. So members are liking, commenting, and sharing nearly two times as much year over year. And then also that the views in the newsfeed are up 60%. So there's a lot happening in the newsfeed. And so making sure that the content that you care about as a company is getting in front of those people that are scrolling through to get their news. We also see that members trust LinkedIn. This is Business Insider. They did a report, I believe it was last year, and they found that LinkedIn is the most trusted social platform when it comes to security, legitimacy, community, user experience, and relevance. Shareability we're just behind Facebook there, but I think that is improving as we continue to improve our product and our overall user experience. But what this means for you as business marketers is that people trust the content that you're posting on LinkedIn. And so your content is additive to this experience that people have come to expect from LinkedIn. But I want to caution that just because you have a piece of content that you want to post on LinkedIn does not necessarily mean that it's going to be impactful across all social channels, because posting content does not mean impactful content. So differentiating, not necessarily the content piece itself, but making sure you're speaking to the audience that matters on each channel. So really kind of personalizing that content across each of the social channels is going to be really critical to creating that authentic and genuine brand that we talked about a little bit earlier. The other thing to think about is leveraging insights. And so for that, I'm actually going to pass it over to Mutesi, and she's going to talk about how leveraging insights is going to be really critical for understanding the content that should be posted.
Thank you, Rachel. So now that we've talked a lot about the content marketing piece, we actually wanted to talk about leveraging insights to make your content more impactful. So firstly, let's talk about what actually motivates our members to engage on LinkedIn. So here are the top 5 reasons for content engagement. Firstly, it's relevant to me. It's educational or informative. To stay on top of the latest brands, it's inspiring, and it helps with skill development. So now that we know what topics are important, let's think about actually the topics that drive engagement on LinkedIn. So industry trends and news. So you're a vertical expert in that field. Show your expertise. Tips and best practices. How can you make our members more productive at work? Not surprisingly, jobs and skills on LinkedIn. How can you make them better workers? Leadership. How can you make them better leaders? Industry events, what's happening around you? Are there events that have already happened that you can share highlights, etc.? Product or services, so how do you differentiate yourselves amongst the competition? And lastly, employee perspectives. So now that we know what topics are really important, we have to sort of quantify our audiences. I know that you know what your audiences are, but LinkedIn can actually help you sort of see who they are across all of your social and your organic. And that's through our website analytics tool called Website Demographics. So this is our audience insights that we leverage through our insight tag. So what it can actually do is it can unlock what kind of demographics are actually landing on your site. And this can be from a variety of your paid, as well as your other social and your organic. So if you can see if you're reaching your intended audience on your website, the traffic and engagement trends by audience, and who's converting, what to create next, and of course, who to target next. So now that we've talked about topics and using website demographics, let's talk about who's doing it best in class. So people that are doing it well are demonstrating in-depth subject matter expertise. They add context to industry news and trends. They remember that professionals are people too, something that we mentioned earlier. And lastly, they put business challenges in context. So outside of just LinkedIn, how can we sort of understand, what are the challenges amongst members? We can actually use search. So in this example, we searched productivity, and a variety of different topics came up, sort of the top things that people were searching across the web. So this provides an interesting perspective of what people are actually searching for and things that you can actually answer in your content marketing strategy. So that leads me to my question for you guys. What tools do you use to inform your content development? So as we wait for the Slido, I'd love to know, Rachel, what you use.
Yeah, so you mentioned search already. AnswerThePublic.com is a great resource when it comes to seeing a compilation of all the questions that are being asked across the various search engines. So that's a really good one. But I see here Google. Search is kind of an quote unquote underrated tool when it comes to understanding what your audience is searching for. So even just looking at the top ranked search terms is a really great example of how you can better understand the topics and content and search terms that your audience really cares about. So,
how about you, Alex?
Yeah, to add on to that, I think one thing that's good to mention aside from these other tools are we use our blog as kind of a test bed for content. So before we invest a lot in perhaps an ebook or like a video series, we kind of test out on the blog and see how it does there. And then before, let that kind of inform our paid plus organic strategy as going into it. I see LinkedIn Analytics, that one makes me happy. Website demographics.
Yeah, exactly. I saw BuzzSumo on there too, which is another great tool to use when thinking about content.
One thing that I liked as well was actually talking to their sales teams.
Yeah.
So something, they're out in the field, they're talking to people, so they have an idea as to like what's important for them and the pain points. So that's a great one as well. The other thing I would also do is sort of other publications out there, eMarketer, Nielsen, see what's going on, what's trending upwards, sort of help, the juices in your brain go flow, et cetera.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah. So does anyone have any questions?
See here. So as we're speaking about engaging content, do we have any best practices or just quick tips for producing more engaging content?
Yeah, so if you're already working with your LinkedIn marketing solutions team, I would definitely reach out to them. So something that I've said to a lot of my clients is before you actually create it or you're in the process, actually have them review it or talk to someone, use the help center. So in terms of best practices, I would say stay away from stock imagery if possible. I would say use text overlay because, visuals are the new headlines. Unlike other social channels, we aren't going to deduct you for having text on the imagery, so you can put as much as you want, adding insightful information there, and then making sure you keep your ad headline at a minimum. How about you, Rachel?
Yeah, well, we're going to talk about full funnel here in just a minute, which will, I think, address some of the engaging content. But when we're thinking about the content itself that we're creating for our audience, it's really thinking audience first. And what's important to them for their entire journey that they're going on with you as a company. And so really creating that trust with your audience is going to be really critical. And so what content do you have, and through speaking to your customers and your sales teams and Google, et cetera, all these tools that you can leverage to understand what's important to your audience and then creating that content, that should really give you that engaging content you're looking for.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think content marketing is about answering your customers and prospects' pain points. Like, they should come to your blog or read your piece of content and think, wow, like, thank you. You just solved my biggest problem this week. So it really is about understanding your audience. It's about testing what works with your audience, because not all audiences want to consume the same content pieces in the same way, in the same format. So I think, one thing that we'll talk about a little bit as we get into the agenda here is video. And that's something we've seen really, really good engagement on the LinkedIn platform with more so than just static images. So we'll talk about that a little bit more during that section. Okay, so this one it's a little broad, but it's been the most upvoted one, so I must ask. So how to build a successful content marketing plan to drive more organic results.
Oh, Alex, I think this is right up your alley, since you drove our showcase page, the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions showcase page. I'll make the shameless plug. From, what was it, 50,000?
So when I first started, okay, I'm going to talk about it for a second, then I'll move on. So when I started here in 2014, we had about 20,000 LinkedIn Marketing Solutions showcase page followers, and we've steadily grown that. Not just by myself, I've actually handed them off to my colleague Steve Kearns, who's just been crushing it. But yeah, we recently hit 1 million followers. So it's been a lot of testing. It's been, I created a whole infographic about it, kind of like how we increased our strategy. But we started posting more. We incorporated third-party content. We did a lot of A/B testing, incorporating more video. These are all things that we did to kind of increase our organic strategy, and also just not having it be a one-way conversation. Responding to followers' comments and engaging with them in that way.
Yep, and we're going to talk about too a little bit later some tactical ways in which you can approach an organic content marketing strategy. So stay tuned, because that is also coming.
Yeah, and just to add to that, Alex, so you talked about talking about third-party stuff. Mm-hmm. So the number one thing in this section was industry news and trends. Mm-hmm. So if you're talking about what other people are doing well as well, I think that sort of resonates with members to show that you're thinking about them first, not just about your product or service.
Absolutely.
So I'll pass it off to you to talk about full funnel strategy, Rachel.
Oh, great. All right. As I mentioned, this is my favorite topic, so I'm very excited about this. The reason why full funnel is so important to me is because it really comes down to having content that is relevant and valuable for that audience member. We really need to make sure that even though we are so many of us are so leads driven, we all need to generate leads for our sales teams. We all understand that. But to really create that valuable and relevant and helpful content that people want to consume, then that is where content marketing kind of lives. And really what that should do is, in turn, once you create that trust and that relationship with your audience by creating all this great content, it should eventually lead to profitable customer action. So that's really what content marketing is and why full funnel is so important. Because oftentimes our focus just becomes too narrow. We have these really great content pieces, but they end up hidden behind all these lead gen forms because we care about driving leads. And so it gets a little bit challenging for us as marketers, because we want the lead, but we also want to share this wonderful content that we've created and spent so much time and energy on. So really it's a balancing act, really. But it's a little bit like if I were to walk into a bar and sit down next to you, Mutesi, and I say, hi, I'm Rachel, what's your name? Mutesi, great. Mutesi, what's your last name?
Nzinda.
Nzinda, awesome. So what company do you work for?
LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, awesome. How big is that company?
Why are you asking?
It gets a little bit strange when you start to ask all these questions when there's no pretext, right? You haven't built up a relationship with that person to start to ask all these kind of intimate questions about who they are, where they work, and all of the other questions that we ask in these lead gen forms. So really making sure that we're starting that relationship first before getting too deep into it. Because we found that most B2B buyers are doing research anonymously, and they're doing it well in advance than we really even consider. So let's say our sales cycle is, just a couple of months, maybe 2 months. B2B buyers are researching up to 6 months prior to the entire buying process. So we need to make sure that we're starting that relationship and growing that relationship and nurturing that relationship before we start to just, throw these lead gen forms at them constantly. And we can do that by creating this full funnel approach by thinking about the audience mindset first. So in this example, we have a CRM vendor, and the audience for this vendor, let's say they're going through some pain points with their current CRM system. They're not able to integrate with all their other MarTech stack that they've got going on. And so they're really frustrated, and they think that maybe having a new CRM is going to help solve for this challenge. As they move through their journey, then they're starting to think about, okay, well, I do want to switch CRMs, but what do I need to look for? What are some of the features and some of the product bells and whistles that I need to look for when thinking about taking on a new CRM vendor? And then finally, at the bottom, we have a CRM vendor in mind. We've done all of our research. We've narrowed it down to maybe 2 or 3. But what is actually going to be really important for my company and business as a whole? Now, the content that we should be thinking about and creating for this audience and for their journey could look something like this. At the very top, you can create maybe a blog post that highlights the benefits of a fully integrated marketing stack. Why is it so important to have all of this integration? What are some of the key points? As they move down, then you can do maybe a case study that talks about how a particular brand was able to grow their business by using your CRM. Still, blog posts and videos work really well here. So what to look for when selecting your marketing tools. And then finally, having your demos and your free trials and all of that good stuff that we all know and love is going to be great at that bottom of the funnel. But really creating this robust and holistic approach to your content creation is only going to help further your relationship with that audience. Measurement. This is a tough one because everyone wants to understand how to measure their content success. And there are some KPIs that you can keep in mind when thinking about your content marketing. And those can be things like increased site traffic, time on site, your increased company page followers, which we just talked about, and engagers. Are people actually engaging with the content that you're posting? Obviously, moving down into CPQL. But then some of the things that we forget about as marketers is that really that customer marketing, when it comes to customer lifetime value, decreased churn, these are all really interesting indicators to understand how your product is being perceived as existing customers are using it. So making sure that we're also creating content for those folks that have already bought our product that we really want to keep as advocates of our company and brand. Now, Alex, since you create content here at LinkedIn, I'd love to hear from you what KPIs you guys use to measure your content marketing success.
Yeah, so it's interesting because I've read some articles recently about how vanity metrics are dead. And I don't think that's true. I just don't think that you should follow them blindly because you might start optimizing for the wrong things. So it's kind of we take more of a holistic approach. Of course, we're looking at all these different things. We have different objectives and different goals for each piece of content we put out there. We actually have an objective and then we back the piece of content into it rather than the other way around. But yeah, we're definitely moving beyond the click to look at things like customer lifetime value and that kind of stuff. So trying to measure beyond just the vanity metrics for sure.
Absolutely.
But we definitely value it all. And we love our blog subscribers. They're the best subscribers on the planet.
Yeah, and that's something too that I think it's important to point out is that I think as marketers we get focused on, again, the leads and everything that's in our CRM, that we tend to forget about the blog, and that is such a critical indicator of whether or not your audience is interested.
Yeah,
in
and
your
it's part of
content.
that relationship building piece that you were talking about as well. And I know you'll talk about top of the funnel content a little bit more, but yeah, the blog is super valuable for us.
Absolutely. Mutesi, anything to add there?
Yeah, the one thing I would add is customer lifetime value. So I had a lot of customers come to me and say, we're seeing a higher quantity or quantity of leads from other social channels. But when they actually came down to it, they actually realized that the customer lifetime value was more valuable with those coming from LinkedIn. So it wasn't just talking about the number of conversions, because one conversion could actually lead to quite a bit of money.
Right, absolutely. That's a great call out. Thank you. So let's talk a little bit about tactics, because I think that there's a lot of tactics out there that we can use, and all of them are going to be valuable in their own respect. But when we think about the full funnel here, one of the things that we can think about is at the top of the funnel, looking at things like audience expansion, SEO, video, site-side personalization. For those that are unfamiliar with audience expansion, Mutesi, would you mind maybe explaining how some of your audience or how some of your clients have used it?
Of course. So as a lot of you might know, for those that are leveraging the platform currently, it's really important to target, but what happens is people sort of really nichely target their audience.
Right.
So audience expansion allows you to actually find that audience and then sort of build like a lookalike within that. So it is able to look at that audience that you'd like to target and then similar like-minded people.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So great for top of the funnel for those people who may be strangers to you or to your brand, and you want to get in front of them. So that's a great opportunity to expand out your audience. As you move down the funnel, things like website retargeting. So Mutesi talked a little bit earlier about the insight tag. This is a great opportunity to leverage retargeting for both your website as well as landing pages that you have set up. Email subscription calls to action, marketing automation, so that email nurture, obviously, I think for most of us as marketers. And then finally, sponsored in-mail and ABM. So these are listed by kind of, I would say, most commonly used based on the funnel stage. That doesn't mean it has to exactly live in each of these categories. I think sponsored content is great both for top of the funnel as well as for bottom of the funnel or mid funnel, especially with the release of our lead gen forms and a couple other great product releases. So don't take this as it has to only fall into this one specific journey stage. They can be used across both. So test. Make sure you're using what works for you and your audience. And this might seem a bit overwhelming, right? With all of this to think about and consider for the full funnel, but you can fill the funnel. We at LinkedIn, we like our analogy. So you can either call it a big rock, a turkey, or a blockbuster. But from that, you would have pebbles, leftovers, or memorabilia. And really what we mean by that is you have this one really big piece of content, and then you have all these other smaller snackable pieces that come along with it. But being able to repurpose content really makes this manageable, and you can do that in two ways. One is additive content. So taking a bunch of smaller pieces of content, like infographics, blog posts, videos, etc., that share a similar theme or concept, and creating one larger piece of content out of that. Or divisible, where you have one big piece of content, and then you can break it down into smaller pieces that can fill the rest of the funnel for your purposes. And Alex, I know we've done this for several of our content pieces.
Yeah, this is kind of like our go-to strategy. So what you'll see on the screen is Secret Sauce. It's our ebook essentially about how LinkedIn uses its own marketing products, and it's the result of lots of A/B testing. It's great as a side note plug. But the reason why I'm talking to this slide is because it kind of embodies the art of repurposing, right? We publish one big piece of content. I think this ebook is like 60 pages. But we like to say there's no prize for hitting publish, and it's unrealistic to think that our entire audience saw it because we just published it one time on the blog. So what we did is we actually had a live video series with our Live with Marketers episodes. We did webcasts in different regions. We have several blog posts that kind of like double click into specific chapters in the ebook itself. We've incorporated into different campaigns, and we've also created infographics. And we also actually created a video that I think you guys will see that'll play during the break, but it's actually seen over 17 million views on the LinkedIn Marketing Solutions Showcase page. And the Live with Marketers episode has now seen, I think it's been viewed over 10,000 times. So just like the power of video, I think it really speaks speaks to that. But yeah, you don't have to kind of reinvent the wheel every time. You can take one piece of content and kind of let it breathe and slice and dice it.
Awesome. That's great. Thank you so much. Now, a quick example of additive content. I'm not sure if Lean Plum actually has done this, so don't quote me on this, but they had a quiz, an assessment that they had posted on LinkedIn as a sponsored content piece. And then when you click through, you can answer a series of questions, and then it gives you some answers as you go along. Now, what's great about this is that they've created a way to get proprietary information from marketers that they can then essentially create a state of report. So this is the state of mobile push notifications, for example. So this is a really great way of leveraging, one, interactive content, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, but two, the proprietary information that you're getting from marketers to create a larger content piece. So some really interesting ways of creating some of this big rock or turkey or blockbuster content that hopefully doesn't take too much time. But the reason why full funnel is so important is because we've found, this is specific to tech buyers, but we have found that 37% of tech buyers are less likely to consider you as a vendor if the first piece of content that they encounter is gated. They're 75% less likely to consider you if all of your content is gated. But there is hope because we've also found that 74% of buyers choose the company that was first to add value. So the thing to take away from this is that, yes, leads are important, but generating that relationship and building that trust with your audience is probably more so. So just keep that in mind as you're creating your content. Something else to keep in mind is thought leadership. So for those of you who have started to consider using a thought leadership or creating a thought leadership program, we have found really great success. So this is a research report that was done in conjunction with Edelman, so between LinkedIn and Edelman. And we found that BDMs and C-suite are actually more likely to invite the organization to propose on a new project once they've consumed that thought leadership. These are huge numbers, 37% of BDMs and 41% of C-suites. We've also found that almost half of these audience groups directly led to a deal, giving that thought leadership, the company that was actually creating that thought leadership, these BDMs and C-suite actually gave them the deal because of that thought leadership. So if you're creating that valuable information, that great thought leadership that we all want to create, it can lead to closed-won business. So with that, we'd love to hear from you where you think the gaps are in your content marketing funnel. So for me, at least, with the clients that I've worked with, I think a lot of the time they skip right over top funnel and they go straight to the lead generation. Mm-hmm. What have you guys seen?
Yeah, I felt the same way with a lot of my clients across different verticals in Canada. And oftentimes, sort of educating about how important top of funnel is and sort of allocating a certain budget to that, and then also having another one underneath, and then seeing a lot of success actually from their thought leadership.
Yep.
So some companies that are doing it really well on the platform are actually a lot of my B2C customers. So sort of highlighting that and showing it to B2B, and then realizing that they too can actually be thought leaders in their space.
So I'm going to anticipate a follow-up question here and just ask. So you recommend some percentage of a budget gets allocated to top funnel.
Yeah.
What percentage would that be?
So I've seen multiple different ones. The one that I sort of am guideline is 60-40.
Okay, 60%.
Top of the funnel,
okay,
and 40% bottom funnel. I know that this isn't realistic for everyone because some people have bosses above that.
We've all got numbers.
Yeah, that won't allow for that. But that is in a perfect world. That's sort of what we recommend.
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely have to give value to get value. So I can't stress enough the importance of top of the funnel content. You're just building that relationship. You're building your brand awareness, your thought leadership. Like I know someone just mentioned that they're lacking brand awareness, and part of that is that top of the funnel content, and not always being super going in for the hard sell with those product first types of pieces of content, but maybe just showing that you're a leader in the industry by tackling the trends and the things that all the influencers are discussing as well.
Yeah, and one of the ways that, at least a LinkedIn tactic that you can use and across your social channels is also leveraging third party.
Yeah.
So if there's an article out there that is relevant to your business and also addresses industry trends or pain points or something along those lines, you can post that to your organic company page, and that helps just kind of not beat your own chest all the time and have other people talk about the things that you're also interested in, so that shows that you're a thought leader as well.
Yeah, someone actually mentioned that bottom of the funnel was something that they wanted to work on. And one thing that I know some advertisers are using, and I always recommend, is our lead gen form. So it helps to break that barrier of actually having to convert on your site. A lot of our traffic does come from mobile now. So if you're using a lead gen form, it's a really easy way. It pre-populates their LinkedIn data. So that's a good way for you to sort of break that lower funnel strategy. And for those Canadians and Europeans out there, our flexible consent, so that check mark box at the bottom, will go live to everyone by the end of the week. So that's maybe one of the reasons why you're not using it. Now you'll be able to.
Okay, great. And then this is an exercise that I did notice a couple of the poll answers were mentioning that one of the challenges that you face is to actually align the right content to the right stage of the funnel. And so this is an exercise that you can go through back in your office with your team and identify what is the audience mindset. What stages are they going through? And you'll want to do this for each of your audiences. I know most of us have multiple audiences. So going through each of your audiences, identifying where are they? If you didn't know anything about your company, and that's really hard to kind of step outside of all of your company branding and mottos and language and all of that, but step outside of that and think about what is it that these people are facing that we can help address in each of these stages. So this is something that you can, as Alex was mentioning, you can download all these slides, you can use this as an example and do it as an exercise with your marketing team. So with that, I think we have some time for questions.
Yes, we're running a bit behind. So I think we might be able to get to these probably in the next
section. In
the next section.
Okay, great. So with that, I'm going to hand it over back to Mutesi, and she's going to talk about the content formats. Oh, I take that back. I'm going to be talking about the content formats, and then we'll switch off. So you're stuck with me for a little bit longer. Okay, so content formats. I know this is something that some of us had been asking about in some of the polls and some of the questions. There's a lot of different formats out there. I'm only going to highlight two: interactive and video, mainly because I think video, as we all know, is growing in popularity. But with interactive, there's some great untapped opportunities when it comes to the content marketing formats here. I love this quote: interactive content is the field trip of content marketing. You really get engaged. You are really able to participate in the content itself. So what does this look like? There's a ton out there. Quizzes are one, assessments, interactive infographics. So as you scroll through the page, you see data points and graphs kind of populating and showing up. That's all really engaging to the eye, and so your audience will just become more engaged with that. Calculators are great, especially for bottom funnel content. You know, how much is this going to cost me? What can I expect? How much can I save if I were to use your product? And then things like interactive white papers are also really, really great content pieces to use. So going back to the Lean Plum example, here we have this assessment, or this quiz, I should say. So it's a quiz to understand where you're at with push notification engagement. You answer a series of questions. So in this case, the first one is about emojis and whether or not you use that in your push notifications. And then in this case, I answered, yes, I use emojis. And then here's the answer. So it gives you a little bit of information before moving on to the next question. So it doesn't just kind of leave you hanging. You get a little bit of insight as you go along. And then at the end, you have this really great, robust kind of, this is where you are in your grading or your score with your push notifications. So making sure you're engaging that person and kind of satisfying what they're looking for as you move them through the quiz is also a really good thing to consider. Now, this is a website through Prudential, a little bit more B2C because we're talking about retirement, but very engaging. I probably spent way too much time on this website looking at how much I need to save for retirement. But the first question is, to what age should you plan for? And I just answered randomly here 105, and apparently that's the right answer. So everyone watching, we need to plan to live to 105 for our retirement.
Right.
As we move down this website, we get to a video, and this video automatically plays, and you can see this. The younger you meets the older you, and like what you should have done differently. There's some stats throughout the video that you can look at. And then once that video is over, you can scroll down and then get an assessment of, this is how old I am. I'll show you here. This was last year that I did this. I was 34, hope to retire at age 70. I think maybe $2 million should do it, but I'll run out of money by the age of 83, unfortunately. So a little depressing, sure, but very engaging content. And really at the end of this, it actually has the call to action of what you should be doing next. So the fact that I'm going to run out of money by the time I'm 83 is okay because I can talk to a financial professional about how to save, how to invest, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really the kind of the crux of what this Prudential website is about. And even though all of this was free content, because I didn't have to enter in my information to get it, at the end, they're convincing you that you should be talking to a financial advisor. So there's always still a way to kind of rope that audience in order to get them to do what you really want them to do. So with that, now we're going to talk about video, and Mutesi is going to walk us through that.
Oh, thanks, Rachel. I think just before I jump into video, I love the idea of the quizzes, and just as people are asking for ideas as how to do their content. If you had a quiz on your site, you'd actually have a good idea as to what resonates with people. So now they know that most people want to, die at the age of 85. Right. So it's like, something along the lines of you're actually going to probably have to save till 105.
Right.
So,
well, and with that, didn't we have quizzes on our blog?
Oh yeah,
for a
we've done
while?
quizzes before. I was just thinking about that because we did one last year to ask people like what types of content they'd like to see from us, like topics and formats to help us inform our strategy for this year. And we'll probably do it again at the end of this year. It was super valuable to know.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So with that, let's jump into video. So video is projected to claim more than 80% of all web traffic by 2019. As you can probably tell, that's right around the corner. So in terms of video across funnel for production cost, we realize that a lot of you might not have high production cost to make a huge blockbuster film. But there's a lot of low production cost video types that you can make that can sort of help you with every stage of the funnel. So on the low production side, we have video slideshows, events, pre-event buzz, et cetera. And actually getting some of your employees to engage would be a great way to do low production costs. So here are the different areas that you can sort of target. So now that we'll talk about what actual videos work on the platform. So firstly, we have explainer videos. Then we have chalk talks, influencer and customer interviews, and lastly, micro videos. So now that we know we want to actually have video on the platform, we have to think about what are the best practices around video. So think of yourself as a silent director. Use subtitles or graphic overlay on all of your content. 85% of social media videos are actually played without sound. So you really want to make sure you convey your message without any sound on. Secondly, we want to keep it short. Think about our attention span. I know sometimes mine is really short, so we want to keep the videos around 30 seconds or less. And lastly, kind of what I talked about a little bit earlier, you can use full funnel strategy for video, but just think about the length for each of the different stages. So at the top of the funnel, maybe it could be a bit longer, and at the bottom you want it to be maybe a little longer if you know your audience, and you can actually speak to them directly. So what video metrics should we use to actually measure success on the platform? Firstly, we can see impressions, so people that have seen 50% of your video within their screen. Views, so those have actually watched it for 2 seconds or more. Our view-through rate, so basically our views divided by our impressions. Our completion rate, so those that have actually completed the video. Completion rate, which is that over view-through rate. And then engagement metrics. This is something I want to highlight. So even if someone doesn't actually complete the video, it's really important if they engage on it. So if we have likes, comments, or shares, that actually gets amplified to their network, so your video is actually reaching a larger audience. And then lastly, full screen plays. So when a viewer sees it in full mode, it's actually really important to measure that as well. So what kind of video content should we actually have on the LinkedIn platform? So firstly, events and conferences do really well. Bring your events to your audience and take them behind the scenes. Demos and tutorials, so showcase your product or service, and definitely be creative. Micro-learning and insights, so you definitely want to educate your audience, but keep it focused and singular subject matter. As we mentioned, we want to keep it short and sweet. And lastly, relatable, so showcase your understanding of their pain points. So here are some examples of those that are doing it best. So on the left-hand side, you can see Amazon Web Services. They had the sound off functionality, so they had subtitles in their video. Boeing had featured product or demos and sort of the first look of what's upcoming. And then Dell highlighted testimonials and case studies. So life isn't all about sponsor content videos. We definitely want to have some native videos, and I'm sure Alex can speak to that. So firstly, we want to actually showcase your product or service. So a good example I saw recently was Google had their VR glasses and people actually showing them. Also, we want you to transport us there. So there's been so many different conferences that's happening around the globe, so we might not be able to attend them. So if you show us highlights, we'd love to see them. Teach it, so have a work or hack to make our members more productive. Also share it, so you might have a unique perspective on the industry or what's happening around the world. We definitely want to hear your perspective. And lastly, you guys might be running video already, so we'd love to sort of understand what videos have resonated with your audiences. So that leads us into our poll question. What types of video have you seen work well in your content marketing? So Alex, I'd love to understand sort of what have worked well for our LinkedIn marketing video content.
So I will say, in the interest of time, I'm going to kind of like skim over this poll. So we definitely want to get to answering all of your questions. And I know that they're rolling in. But I just will say that I think one of the biggest misconceptions with video is that you have to have this huge advertising budget to be effective with it. And it's just not true. Our team has a series called Indispensable Seconds, where we're just filming ourselves and talking about the latest industry trends. Of course, having a CTA directing them back to our blog to stay up on all the latest trends and all things LinkedIn marketing solutions. So I wanted to get to some of these questions because
videos with humor. I saw that one. That's great.
Oh yeah, videos with humor, definitely. All right, so one of the questions I have for you guys, I see many people being able to leverage LinkedIn as a personal branding platform. However, companies struggle. What are they doing
Talking about themselves too much. Personal influencers on LinkedIn are just that, because they have proven themselves to be insightful, inspiring, engaging content producers, really. And so they're able to do that because they talk about things that matter to the audiences that are following them. And I think too often, again, with B2B especially, and with our marketers, we just get so focused on what sales needs and driving those lead gen or those leads to sales, that we end up talking too much about our own product and how great we are, and we just tend to forget that it's our audience that matters the most.
Right. I totally agree.
Yeah, I would definitely double click on that. and then the other thing too is when I think about some of the influencers doing it well are those that are talking about what's happening in the world. What are the industry trends? So for instance, I've seen sort of an uplift in sustainability. So maybe there's something that you're doing to be a sustainable business, or what your tenets are within your own culture to do that, and really resonating with members on our platform.
All right, there's one question around blog articles and content calendar best practices, but I'm actually going to wait because we're going to talk about that in the distro section coming up. But let's see. Photo posts versus video posts versus link posts. What would you recommend leveraging more of to drive higher engagement?
So what have I personally seen on the platform is if you want to increase engagement on the platform, videos. Videos crush engagement in terms of likes, comments, shares. It's incredible. And it definitely helps with that top of funnel strategy. Carousel ads, actually, we haven't really touched on, but that's sort of new to our platform, though that has really high engagement. And really for the bottom of the funnel, definitely leveraging just regular static sponsor content works really well. That's what I've seen across many different verticals. How about yourself, Rachel?
Yeah, so we actually had some conversations with our editor-in-chief, Dan Roth, and he was mentioning that their team is actually focusing a lot more on the headlines, on the actual copy that's in the post itself, because that's kind of what captures your attention. Sorry, I take that back. The image captures your attention, the headline gets you to click, essentially. And so using really impactful imagery is great because that's what you see as you're kind of just scrolling through on your mobile phone. But then the headline is what's really important to that viewer. So I would say the image is probably really great, the image style post, because you get that attention capture as well as the headline.
Yep, totally agree. Like Tezzy was saying earlier, visual is the new headline. So
Yeah.
we totally believe that here. Okay, one more and then we'll take a 5-minute break. So what recommendations do you have for organizations that are trying to market on the LinkedIn platform on a limited budget? First of all, anyone who has an unlimited budget, come talk to me because I want to know who your boss is.
Absolutely. Leverage organic. You know, and take some of the strategies that you implemented for our showcase page to really kind of gain that followership, because that will also get you the virality and that recognition across the entire platform.
Yeah. And the other thing I would mention to some of my other advertisers that do have smaller budgets, something that they'll do is sort of have that like thought leadership within their sponsor content post and just sort of run them whenever they're able to. And then actually running text ads. So that's sort of our version of like AdWords. So it's a desktop only feature, but in terms of the actual cost per impression or click is a lot less than some of our other ones. And people do find a lot of success, and you can track, your conversions similar to other products. So that's something I would leverage from like a paid perspective.
Awesome.
Great. Well, we are going to go ahead and take a 5-minute break now. Feel free to, grab some coffee or scroll through your LinkedIn feed, as I know you all are definitely going to do. And we'll meet back here in 5 minutes to go through the rest of our agenda.
Hey, buddy. My name's Sid. I'm a swell kid. I made the elevator do what she did. Come on, I'll give you a lift. This guy here is the cat's whiskers, the bee's knees, 100% genuine article. Listen up and listen fast.
LinkedIn sponsored content allows marketers to reach their audience through targeted content within the LinkedIn members feed.
What do you hear? What do you say?
This mobile-optimized native ad format allows marketers to serve upper, middle, and lower funnel content to their audience in a professional context.
That's one rap you ain't gonna beat.
Which means audiences are engaging with content in the right mindset, allowing marketers to develop trust and credibility while achieving their marketing objectives.
And that's just potatoes. Here comes the gravy.
In fact, LinkedIn sponsored content delivers 3x higher conversion rates than other online marketing platforms.
Holy moly, that's a lot of jam with that toast. What'd I tell you? 100% real McCoy, see?
Welcome back. We hope that you enjoyed your break. We're going to roll into our next agenda topic now with Rachel all about distribution. We know how important distribution is. There's no prize for hitting publish, as we say. So take it away, Rachel, on distribution.
Awesome. And we are going to get to questions here in a little bit. We have a ton of questions, so thank you so much for submitting. We are going to answer as many as we can as we go through some of these slides too, because I know we had some questions around distribution and content calendars. So this is the section for you. So with that, let's talk about content calendars. There are a couple different ways of thinking about content calendars, and I've just highlighted a few here. First and foremost is the editorial calendar. And the reason why the editorial calendar is so important is because this is what everyone within the company should really use to understand and know what content is going to be produced, what content has been done, and then essentially what's to come, what you guys are thinking about. This can also highlight themes or tent poles for the year that you are going to align the rest of your content based on those tents or to tent poles or themes. And so this is really kind of the big content piece that everyone should be using and referencing. And then we have our social media calendar, which is important in our case because we are a social media platform. And this is where you should outline what channels you're going to be distributing your content on, and then aligning that to the themes or the content that you're using in your editorial calendar. So these two really kind of go hand in hand. But with the social media calendar, it's probably not as widely distributed as the editorial calendar, and it's more specific to what is going to be distributed across social. Now, a calendar can look something like this. This is just a media kit from Entrepreneur magazine. And what I like about this is that it just highlights the themes that Entrepreneur is going to focus on for each month for this given year. And this is great because this allows them to understand all the other content pieces that are going to surround this. So any one-off blog posts that they post, any videos, anything else that they're doing can come back and align to this larger theme. Now, what should you consider when it comes to a calendar? This seems a little bit obvious, but is often overlooked. Key dates. What is coming up in your year that you want to keep an eye out for? Is there a big product release or a new version of your product that's going to be released that you really want to highlight? In San Francisco, we just wrapped up Open World and Dreamforce and all these other large conferences. Are those conferences maybe you have a big presence at and you want to highlight content around that? Even things around what Matusi was chatting about earlier with topics, leadership and productivity. Are there certain things that you can highlight around these conferences that make sense for your company? Collaboration. This is a really key one. Who is going to have access to edit and who is going to have access to just view? Because we all have probably a lot of people that are in the kitchen, so a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Do we want to have all of them editing this calendar? Probably not. So making sure there's a clear set of roles and responsibilities for each of these teams that you're going to allow to view this calendar. Also your audience. So who is this audience and what channels are they more likely to be active on? So just highlighting that and identifying which content is going to be allocated to each of those channels as we move into the content allocation. So just identifying that and making sure that you're kind of personalizing your content for each of the channels without necessarily having to personalize every piece of content you create. And then we already talked about themes, so we don't need to talk too much about that. Now, this is a very rudimentary example, but this is one way you can think about your content calendar for your social media. Now, like I said, this is very rudimentary, and a lot of this is also going to be determined by testing because you know your audience best and you know which channels they're going to be on. So perhaps you find that through your testing, you get a lot of engagement on LinkedIn on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. Now, this is also for your organic strategy. This is not paid. This is organic because you can determine which days you want to post on through organic. Through paid, it's a little bit different. So you find Twitter works well on Mondays and Thursdays, and then Facebook works well in the middle of the week. But then the next week, let's say you have an event that either you're attending or you're hosting or whatever it might be. So Twitter and LinkedIn are going to be really heavy on those days because you want to highlight what's to come and then what happened at those events. And we're going to talk about some examples of that here in a little bit as well. But these are all really great ways of thinking about the content and the channels on which you're going to distribute. Another way of thinking about it is by kind of a diet plan. Like I said earlier, at LinkedIn, we like our analogies. So we have kind of a organic content diet plan where Monday, let's say, you're going to have content that's really easy to dish out. So this is going to be your cereal day. So things that you already have produced, blogs, on-demand webinars, infographics, those types of content pieces are really great for this cereal day. Tuesday, this is going to be the content that takes a little bit more time and energy and effort. So this is your turkey day. Your analyst reports, your big rock content, the stuff that's going to take time and money to create, that's what you distribute on Tuesday. Wednesday is it's tough to chew, but it's good for you, the spinach. So maybe kind of tough to get, things like interviews or strategic points of view, but this is going to be really valuable for your audience. Thursday, you can add some spice into the mix. So things like curated content, trending topics, and then making sure you add your perspective to it so that you have your voice infused into this content as well. Friday's your cake day. So this is the fun stuff, humor, culture content, behind the scenes, all this really great stuff that is out there that maybe your employees have this great insight to or about. That's a great way to use it, is this cake day. And then if you have a 6-day-a-week plan, then Saturday can be your easy to dish out content. But Alex, you were talking to me at the break about how some folks were asking about what days of the week work best. So how does LinkedIn do it?
Yeah, so I'll go into this a little bit more on this slide, but essentially it's so right what Rachel's saying about you need to test with your own audience. Our blog sees the most traffic probably Monday through Wednesday, and then it kind of trails off. And we've actually stopped posting on Saturdays because we found that those posts weren't getting much engagement anyway. Our team over in EMEA, they have their own blog, and they've been doing lots of testing with just posting like 3 times a week, and they've actually seen increased organic traffic. So it really just depends on your audience, but I'll give you kind of a preview of how we do it. So I know there was a question about how many times should I blog per week to be successful, but unfortunately I don't have like a silver bullet answer for you. But as you're getting ramped, I'd say, you just test and see how things are doing. So on Monday, this is where we reserve kind of like our big announcements, like product features, or like when we announce that we went all in on video. On Tuesday, we might post to a piece of content, so a big rock, like our secret sauce ebook that I mentioned earlier. On Wednesday, we might post to a case study, and it's also important to note that we have a lot of a great community of guest posters because we don't want to be just talking about ourselves all the time. We want to help let our customers shine and help them tell our story as well. And then Thursday, so we go to a lot of conferences and we like to give our blog subscribers kind of a behind the scenes look at what it was like when we were there. Also, we found that compiling blog posts with a bunch of statistics and quotes really do well. People like to grab those little nuggets of information and share it out with their audience. On Friday, as we mentioned, chocolate cake content. People are getting ready for the weekend. They want something a little bit more digestible. So we'll do a wrap up trending of everything that was trending in the marketing world that week. And then I mentioned Saturday, we're kind of taking a break. Sunday, we bring it back together with my colleague Sean Callahan's series called B2B Beat, and it's essentially, an easy Sunday read, things that are top of mind in the marketing world.
Awesome. So were there any questions that we were not able to answer in this section?
There was one about content calendar best practices, and I know that we talked about that. Our team, our content calendar is kind of ever changing and changing probably more than I would like to admit. Keeps me young, keeps me on my toes. But yeah, I think it's really important to have shared themes and goals with your sales team and all your other. We have so many content stakeholders, so that's one thing that I would make sure to have a calendar and have that open dialogue about it.
Awesome.
Okay, let's see what else we have here. How can I calculate a budget to do B2B LinkedIn campaigns? My objective is lead generation.
Oh, that's a big topic. That can probably be a masterclass into itself. But I think, Mutesi mentioned this earlier, where she has advised clients to allocate a certain amount of budget to some top funnel content. And I think that's actually really important, because we do have a case study where we had a client that was only doing acquisition messaging, and they saw a conversion rate of about 2.2%. They were convinced to actually add some brand messaging into the mix. And so they were running both in conjunction, and they saw their conversion rate skyrocket to 1.2%. So a 6x increase or something like that. So there is a lot of value in running some top funnel content, even if your goal is demand gen. So just make sure you keep that in mind when you're thinking about your budget. Obviously, things like audience and where your audience is across all the social channels is going to be important. But you can also start small. So if you have, let's just say 10,000 to keep easy round numbers. If you have a budget of 10,000, even starting with about 10% or 20% of that budget to allocate to top funnel can make an impact. So thinking about the content that makes sense for the buyer journey that your audience is going on, and then making sure that the content aligns to that is going to be really key. So I think a lot of it is also in the content marketing strategy. What does your content marketing strategy look like? And then building out a budget for it. So there's a lot to be said there too. But I know that there's a lot that I'm missing.
No, yeah, from like an account perspective. So I work with clients such as yourself. So if you have an account team at LinkedIn, I would definitely reach out to them. They can help you in terms of forecasting what is the right budget for you and that audience. Coming up in the future, we're going to be moving the platform to be objective-based buying. So right now, that's like a slow rollout. So for those that haven't seen it or haven't heard of it, don't worry, it's brand new. It's coming in 2019. And in that tool, it'll actually walk you through what your objective is and what kind of content you should be running. And then additionally, it'll actually show you sort of the audience on the platform and what the budget ranges should be for that time period. So that will be coming down the pipeline soon. So that will help you in terms of creating the paid strategy.
That's awesome. I think that's going to be really helpful for our audience, for our members here, our clients at LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Okay. And what about, so we've been talking a lot about effective content, more engaging content, success in content marketing, by what measure? That's kind of the question. I know we already talked about that a little bit before, but I know for our team, every piece of content that we post we have a lot of tracking links, so we know where the traffic is coming from, and we can track people that click from our piece of content into Campaign Manager and then started spending. So maybe that helps answer the question a little bit more.
Yeah, and that's a tough one because it depends, honestly. It depends on what your goals are and then the KPIs at which you're going to measure those goals. So understanding, I think, first and foremost, what do you want to do with your content? It comes back to the why. So why are you creating content? What business impact are you hoping to see with that? And then aligning the measurement pieces to that. I think it comes back to that, though, is understanding why you're doing it in the first place.
Yeah, I also think just in terms of like what you're putting out there, like make sure, I would look at it in two perspectives. One is engagement. I think it's really important if it's engaging because, like I mentioned earlier, it's being amplified out to the rest of your network. So you're getting sort of like free impressions and free clicks, et cetera, if you get likes, comments, and engagements. The other thing is leveraging our insight tag, which I mentioned. So in that case, our tool can actually optimize towards awareness. It can do website traffic as well as website conversions. So looking at it from both perspectives is what I'll kind of do when I'm pulling reports for clients, saying the engagement was really high, so this is all the extra eyes we were able to have, and sort of putting a cost associated to that, as well as how are they performing on your site.
Thank you, guys. I hope that helps to answer the question. Again, thank you so much. We have so many questions coming in. We're going to roll into the next topic, but don't worry, we'll get to the rest of the questions.
Yes, so mastering the newsfeed, and Mutesi, you're going to walk us through what that looks like.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks, Rachel. So yeah, a lot of the questions have been around this, so I'm excited we're finally diving deep into this particular topic. So firstly, as I mentioned, visuals are the new headlines. As you can probably tell, you're bombarded with content, so am I. So imagery is the biggest factor in engagement. So make sure yours is differentiated amongst the crowd. So avoid stock imagery if possible, leveraging real people or unexpected images. So
And can I cut in there really
Yeah, of
quickly?
course.
Even with stock images, it's okay. Just go to page 5. don't use the image that's on the first page because everyone else is using that same image.
Yeah.
So.
Another thing our team has done is actually we've hosted photo shoots with our own team because we're
Yes.
like, hey, why don't we just feature the people that actually are marketing, on
yeah, exactly. Like I think everyone, at least in San Francisco, seems to have an iPhone X, which has a great camera. So you can definitely use images of what's happening around you. So here are some examples of a couple of people who are doing it well. So we have BlackRock on the left-hand side, Limelight Networks. I kind of like this one. So they're talking about saving your money. So they use a stock image, but it kind of makes it a little bit funny and puts humor into it. And lastly, Salesforce. They have great content marketing, and all of it is very streamlined, so you kind of know it's them. So speaking of who's doing it really well, here's an example. None other than Google. So their Think Google campaign goes through sort of all of these different things. And what they're doing is actually providing a lot of thought leadership, which is what we talked about earlier. So they're not just talking about how you should just use Google, but what is important for you as like a marketer. So, and the other thing is it's consistent. So I know that it's Google when I'm in the feed. Also bring insights into the feed. So, we're talking about all this like great imagery. We have the example on both sides. The imagery isn't super crazy, but it really stands out in terms of sort of showing me something that I didn't know earlier. So bring insights, feature compelling stats, data visuals to promote your content. And as I mentioned earlier, we aren't going to duct you like other social channels, so you can have some text within the imagery. Also, this is something that I'm always telling our advertisers to do, and I personally really like, is be creative. Humor and creativity goes a long way, especially on LinkedIn. So here's some examples that are doing it really well. So on the left-hand side, we are in the Halloween season. So BlackRock sort of has, all these people trick-or-treating, and then one kid asks, how can I help my 401k? And then on the right-hand side, we have IBM Security, and they're talking about phishing, and then they literally have a photo of someone phishing. And here are some other examples of being creative on the platform. So we have Boston Consulting Group as well as ServiceNow. So as you can see here, these aren't necessarily like high budget imagery, but they really speak to me, and they'd be something that a lot of our members would actually click and go forward on. Speaking of clicking, we have to make sure that we keep links in mind. So when we're using rich media images, be sure to include a link in the copy. The image itself will not direct to the landing page. So some of my advertisers will sometimes, have me review their content before it goes live, thank goodness. So we want to make sure that it's actually leading to your site, because there's a lot of great content that they can actually absorb off the feed. And so this is what I wanted to talk about before, is some tools to use. So here's some free tools that you can help to make awesome imagery. Myself, I actually use Piktochart all the time to make infographics for some of my clients to make it a little bit more engaging for them. So our second tip is be brief, be bold, and be gone. So aim to keep your intro text less than 100 characters and offer a clear value proposition for your content. So when I talk about keep it short, what you'll notice is on the platform, if your text is a little too long, there'll be that see more. And let's be honest with everyone, you probably won't necessarily always click on see more. And then the other thing you have to remember is it may look really great on desktop, but it might be truncated on mobile. So we have to make sure that the mobile experience is as good as the desktop experience. So here, leveraging audience insights in your copy, so things that you maybe took from your quizzes that we talked about, or other pieces of content, or your website analytics, address your target audience. It is way more compelling for someone to actually speak directly to me. And then also lead with their pain points. You are solving for someone's issues with your product or service, so you should definitely talk about that and how you can help them be more productive workers. So what else should we highlight? Being direct. What will the member get by clicking on your post? Highlight a use case. Provide a short description of how a member can use your product or service. Listicles. Members know what to expect when there's member introduction, so the 5 reasons to be a better marketer on the platform. And also key trends. So highlight key topics or trends in your copy to make it easy to find. Thirdly, use hashtags wisely. Hashtags are now supported on LinkedIn, but be cognizant of how they are used across your company. So here are some examples. So some of you who are probably active LinkedIn users, I hope you all are, you can actually follow different hashtags across the platform. So if you're using hashtags in your copy, it will come up that way. So on the left-hand side, following content strategy and having the Google Analytics one come up. Events and news, so Pulse 2018, or you mentioned Dreamforce, those are sort of big events, so definitely having the hashtag will be helpful. And then topics or campaigns. So what's happening in the world, what's trending, you can add those if it makes sense to your product or service.
Digital transformation is a big one right now, or machine learning.
Yeah.
So
AI.
exactly.
And then also kind of something that I spoke to earlier, design for the mobile experience. 80% and growing of our member sessions are actually coming from mobile. So we want to make sure that your site as well as your content is ready for the mobile experience.
There is a question about mobile devices and what the best ways to kind of differentiate content across devices. So I just want to double click on that and making sure that your image looks great on small screens, making sure it's not too text heavy. Those are some of the ways that we think about it.
Yeah, so the great thing that you can do from a paid perspective is when you're actually building out the content, on the right-hand side, once you build the sponsor content, you can click on the little I portion and you can look at it in a mobile, tablet, or desktop view. And that way you can see if the see more thing comes up or how it kind of looks. Another way is if you actually have some of your organic, so say maybe you're not running paid quite yet, you can post that content, look at it within your desktop, and if you click on inspect and change your screen to a mobile, you'll be able to see what it looks like. So these are ways that I sort of take screenshots for clients to say, hey, great piece of content, but this is what it's looking like on mobile, so maybe we should try to think about changing the text. And also just getting into the next slide, content consumption behaviors have actually evolved. So if you think about how we look at content on our phones versus desktop, it's fairly different. So on mobile, it's actually sort of like within the middle, and on desktop, it's sort of like on the top left side. So 68% of their time is actually in the top center. So you want to make sure that when they actually get to your landing page, that's where the heavy stuff is that they really want to consume. So here are some tips to create content that resonates on mobile. Lead with the most insightful aspect of the content first. So what is it that you're trying to convey? That's why we really do recommend having a little bit of text on your imagery. Feature images, but only high impact ones. Remember, it's on mobile, so it's going to be a little bit smaller than how you're going to view it on desktop. And streamline your copy. Alex, I think you mentioned this, making sure that your copy is really in line with your imagery, because once they actually see it, their image, and they see the headline and it relates, that's when they'll actually move forward. So tip number 5 is balance your content output. So Rachel kind of talked about this, so I'm going to fly through this section. But research is always happening. So think about B2B decision makers, they're always on. So they're researching during the workday, and they're researching in the evening, and they're spending time researching on weekends. I don't know about you guys, I'm always on my phone, I'm always looking at different research. I don't know why, but that means that you should really be always on. So going back to balancing our content mix, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of this, but it is really important to have different pieces of content, because different pieces of content resonate with different people. I have some colleagues who love video, and I love video as well, but for me, I really like infographics. So if you throw me an infographic, for instance, I'm definitely going to consume that. So that leads us into our poll question. What are key takeaways from mastering the LinkedIn newsfeed? So Alex, I'd love to just sort of understand, are you guys using these similar tips for when you're having content on the LinkedIn?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we keep our captions short and sweet. We're asking questions. We're making sure that the imagery matches the messaging. Yeah, all of the above, making sure there's not too much text on the imagery, incorporating a lot of video. I mean, our team is all in on video right now, and different video formats. Some is, like I mentioned before, just us on our iPhones. Some is a little bit more, polished, but yeah, a good mix of all that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's like really, really important. Also, like something that I tell some of my advertisers, maybe you're new to advertising on LinkedIn. Some of our specs are really similar to other social channels. So how can you sort of leverage that? So with different video, with sponsored content, as well as carousel ads. There was one question, I don't see it anymore, but basically talking about the image size, something that maybe we can follow up with. But there are sort of like lines that maybe you should keep within to ensure that it looks good on sponsored content with organic, because the specs are slightly different, but essentially the same. So we can send those out after.
Yeah, I think our team uses 1200 by 627 pixels is the best practice. Yeah.
So one comment that I see on the poll here is using content that is up to date and relevant for the audience or relevant for the times. And obviously relevant for the audience makes sense. But one thing that I just want to call out too is that you don't always have to be churning out brand new content every week.
Right.
HubSpot had this really great article not too long ago where they were analyzing some of their most engaged blog posts. And what they found was that there was a blog post from a year prior that had super high engagement. And so what they did is they went in and they said, let's see about reposting this. They tweaked it a little bit, updated it slightly, and then reposted it, and it got a huge number of engagements again. And so that's something to keep in mind, is that it doesn't always have to be net new when you're creating content. It can be older content that's updated, just making sure it's relevant.
Yep, if it's not broken, you don't always need to fix it.
Exactly.
So yeah, that's actually a strategy that we've been implementing on our blog as well, just taking old posts and kind of updating them. But yeah, keeping all that SEO goodness.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love everyone's comments in terms of the key takeaways. Everyone was listening, which is
A+ to everyone.
yeah. So before we get into the next section, I'd love to just sort of answer any additional questions. I know we have quite a few.
Yes, let's see. What metrics often go overlooked when monitoring promoted or sponsored content?
That's a good question.
I would say for me personally, what I notice is like engagement. So I think one thing is if you're having a campaign, you're running it, say you're running it on a CPC. So if, for instance, all of your content is being shared, people are commenting, we can actually pull reports for you that shows how much it's been amplified. So sometimes for you guys, you know, budgets are tight. That makes complete sense. But showing how your content is doing can actually show you have like earned media. So that's sort of like your engagement metrics with like we sort of multiply it by what your lowest like CPC was. And then showing, you know, we spent $10,000, but we actually got $2,000 to $3,000 in like additional earned media. So that's something I would make sure to sort of quantify as well.
How do you get your own employees to generate thought leadership content or even engage with your content and repost it?
Oh, I'm going to do a shameless plug here for Elevate. So we have a product here at LinkedIn called LinkedIn Elevate, and it's an employee activation platform. With that said, you don't always have to buy a product to get your employees to engage. There's some other things that you can do, such as gamification, leaderboards, et cetera, you know, offering a gift card to Amazon or something like that, that will hopefully spur some engagement. It is time consuming though when you're doing it on your own. There are products aside from LinkedIn Elevate, but they essentially allow you to curate the content that your employees can easily share with their networks. So it makes it really easy for anybody that has compliance issues or legalities. Financial services comes to mind. So if you have something like that, it's a very easy way to just say, this is the content that you can share as employees. Go ahead and share it out. Doing that manually is a bit more time consuming, but it's possible to do.
Yeah, I had a client that was like, we want our employees to like really share more, especially like senior leadership, et cetera. So I think just like making it easy for people. Mm-hmm. So, you know, being like, I will write you a script, I will film you doing this. And I'll edit it, can you please just share it? So doing that, and people like being involved with stuff like that. I think everyone like a little bit kind of maybe wants to be an actor. So having some of your employees sort of have that as well, like having being like, hey, I want to create a video that we can all kind of share about our culture or like what we're doing. And you'd be surprised at how many people would actually want to get behind that.
And also, sorry, not to keep going on about this, but something else to keep in mind, especially when it comes to creation with your employees, is think about the pain points. We actually talked about this earlier about what tools do you use to create content. Think about your customers' pain points. And you were saying earlier that the sales team is a really great resource for that. And that's where you can leverage that, is have your sales teams talk about the pain points and the challenges that they're facing and recommendations that they give to their clients that have worked well, because you get kind of a case study without being a case study, and you get the recommendation from the horse's mouth, so to speak. And so that's a really great way of doing it too, is with the creation, have your employees talk about the challenges that they are facing on a daily basis, because then that also leads to the authenticity.
Yeah. Yep. All right, shall we roll into reaching the right audience?
Yes, I will. Oh, I'm still on this one. So reaching the right audience. So targeting. So as we mentioned earlier at the beginning, you guys know your audience and LinkedIn has your audience, but also you have data on your audience that you can actually leverage on our platform. So we can reach qualified prospects using your data. So firstly, we have website retargeting. So that's leveraging our insight tag. So our insight tag actually allows us to unlock those website demographics we talked about, which can also be really helpful to see what's happening on your other paid channels. We have email contact targeting. So if you have a list of emails within your CRM system, or maybe you have an Excel sheet, or maybe you're using lead gen forms and you want to reactivate those people, you can actually upload them into the platform. We have data integration, so back to CRMs. There's many that we partner with. You can find them all online. I'm sure you can find them on our blog. And lastly, we have account targeting. So you know the companies that you want to target. You can upload a list of up to 300,000 and then target them from there. So again, back to the insight tag. So using this to actually understand your audiences who are engaging and converting, and leveraging this data to actually understand the different parts of the funnel that you want to reach. So the cool thing is you can kind of see on the screen, but you can actually compare different parts of your site and see a variety of different metrics. So for those of you that aren't using it, it's job title, it's function, it's industry, it's company, it's seniority, it's country, location, so that would be city. And so you can have an idea as to, is this particular segment growing? Is it shrinking? Or are people more interested in the blog, et cetera? And the other reason it's really good to know your audience is leveraging the buying committee, because it's changed quite a bit in the last couple of years. So now there's about 17 people within that influencing major enterprise technology decisions, which is up from 2011 when there was only 10. And also 45% of technology decision makers work outside of IT. So they're not just there, they're in finance, because those are ones funding the dream, sales, facilities, as well as marketing. And then lastly, there are now 4 or more functions involved in the purchasing decision. So it's not necessarily just the C-suite. And also looking at the seniority people, because they're the next generation of those that are making those decisions. So Alex, do you want to talk a little bit about changing the audience a little bit in terms of, how we should change our audience for different decision power and how we can broaden it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think one of the main things that's so unique about LinkedIn is like our amazing audience and how we're able to target them. We've definitely taken the approach of not hyper targeting, which is kind of a mistake that I've seen people make again and again. But yeah, we work off of like a propensity model of how people have engaged with our content and like what they've indicated interest in, so that we can make it as personal and relevant as possible.
Yeah. That's amazing. And also, if you work with your account team, they can definitely help you target those same people. One thing I do really want to mention, because I talk about this with every advertiser, is the difference between function targeting and title targeting. So title targeting is exact, and function targeting actually allows you to sort of hone in on all of those different titles without just those specifics. So for instance, myself, I'm a client solutions manager. A lot of my colleagues also put what vertical they work in, so they wouldn't necessarily be within that bucket. So that's why function and seniority targeting can really help broaden your audience without broadening it too much and that you're within it. So does anyone have any other questions on this topic?
Let's see.
And while you're looking up questions, one thing that I just want to call out regarding the audience targeting is that a lot of the clients that I work with are tech clients in the industry of tech. And so many of them are targeting ITDMs, right? The IT decision makers. And we really need to think beyond that, especially given that decision tree, essentially, where there are 17 people involved in the buying decision. We really need to expand beyond the ITDMs. One, there's limited number of them. Two, it gets expensive. And three, not all of your content is going to engage an ITDM. It's going to go beyond that. And so really embracing that and making sure that you realize that there is more to just an ITDM for a tech decision product, right? So just making sure that you keep that in mind when you're thinking about your targeting.
I think also another thing with targeting ITDMs is also targeting people who are individual contributors. Like they actually have a lot more power and sway than you would think, you know? So for instance, myself at my previous company, it was sort of like a marketing automation tool. And I was constantly working with clients and trying to get them to onboard them and show examples. And it was great. It's a good thing to do, but sometimes there were clients that were smaller that maybe didn't warrant having a full call. And so I, was looking online and I found this company that was able to sort of make like a learning hub and sort of had like quizzes and videos. And I actually, spoke to my VP and I said, this would be great for our platform. It's not that expensive and we can send this out, put it in our blog post.
Scalable.
It's scalable. So I did the whole decision, like buying process. And then when it got to actually, purchasing it, I spoke with my VP and he gave it the green light. And at this time I was a very individual contributor. So yeah, I think also, outside of the ITDMs and also thinking about the decision buying committee of tomorrow.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, I have a good one that's close to my heart here. It resonates for some reason. How do you develop content that is unique? Most content is a rehash of topics covered before.
Well, you go ahead. It's close to your heart.
Well, I think, going to all these marketing conferences and staying up on all the blogs, I do see a lot of like the same topics covered again and again. But I think that one thing that's worked really well for us is like you need to talk about what you know, right? So like you need to talk about your customers' pain points. We do a lot of original research, and the research that we do and the insights that we share always do really well because that's really specific and unique to us.
Yep.
Yeah, I think also though, it's okay if it's similar, if it's going to resonate well with your brand. I also think like simplicity, so if you can take that topic and just make it really simplified, that seems to work really well. I've noticed that within some of our blog posts as well. We don't always need to reinvent the wheel. Like if we think about literal blockbusters, which I know like the content marketing evangelists talk about all the time, we're reinventing old things because they resonate well. So
absolutely. And the other thing, if you're really looking to create unique and different content, is do a brainstorm session with your team. Come up with ideas that may be a little bit out of the box, but then you can start to tie in strategies and how to actually do it. So just doing a whiteboard brainstorm session can be really beneficial in coming up with some new, unique ideas that maybe other people are not doing. Maybe they are, but you have your own twist on it. So don't discount just the power of a whiteboard. That can also help in guiding some of these.
Yeah, we have spitball sessions on our team every other Friday afternoon.
Nice.
And it's just, we throw out the craziest ideas.
Yeah.
Most of them don't stick, but some of them have resulted in some of our more compelling campaigns. So yeah, it's definitely important not to overlook that. Okay, one more and then we'll roll into A/B testing, one of my favorite subjects. How do I integrate my content strategy into my company's overall marketing strategy?
That's a great question. And honestly, my recommendation is to if you haven't done them, do it in tandem, because your overall marketing strategy is kind of the why. Like, why are you marketing in the first place? So that's what that should answer. What are the business impacts of the marketing that you're going to put in place? etc. The content marketing is the essentially answering that question, because you're creating content to help move the business forward. But what's important to your audience? So there's several questions that you need to ask that is going to be more audience centric, but that is going to tie into your overall marketing and business goals. So having them done kind of in tandem is going to be really important as well. But happy to hear from you guys as well.
Yeah, I think also just like probably having that conversation with those that are making the marketing decisions and be like, this is sort of the way that we want to go. And I think people are probably more open to making it more streamlined, and maybe that's not an idea that they had thought of previously, but that they would want to work with as well.
Yeah, I think shared goals is very important with all your stakeholders, definitely, so you're on the same page. But this goes back to what you were saying before about how content marketing is the only marketing left.
Right.
You know, and like
Exactly.
the buyer's journey, people are engaging with 8 different pieces of content, and they go with the company that was first to help them. So if your company is not bought in on content, now is the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, shall we talk about some A/B tests?
Let's talk about A/B testing. So here's an example of some A/B testing, and we're going to go into sort of the do's and what have you, because it is so important to A/B test. I had a client who was obsessed with A/B testing. He was amazing. And he got it down to understanding what hair color resonated well using his sponsor content.
Wow.
So that is how granular he got, and within his text ads, sponsor content, dynamic ads. So I just thought, like, you know, he was able to see an actual uplift in the conversions if that's something that you're looking towards.
And let's make a caveat there then too. When you're A/B testing, it's really important to remember to test one variable at a time.
Yes. Yep.
Only test one thing at a time.
Mm-hmm. So in this example, we had version A, which was there was no audience call out, but the image was the same. So like Rachel was saying, only one small difference. And then in version B, we had them call out marketers. Which one do you think probably resonated the best? Well, it was the second one, when we had a 53 increase in the cost per view. So basically what this means is, like we were talking about, people like it when you talk to them directly. So maybe you don't have an idea as to what you want to A/B test or ideas generating. So one is headlines. We can do short versus long. We can do the audience versus you. We can do guide versus ebook. With images, we can do a person or an object, or stat versus quotes. And then our call to action can be, you know, register or join, learn more or read more. And so those are small little tweaks that you can change, and you might be able to see a huge uplift. And the other good thing about A/B testing is if you don't have a lot of content, and we should be running 4 pieces of content within a campaign, A/B testing is a great way to sort of leverage, you know, 2 pieces of images and change the headline, and then maybe another 2 and do that as well. So who are some best-in-class A/B testing with sponsor content? So with this one, we just tested the headlines that were different. The second one was the image. And then the third one was the call to action. So now I'm going to pass it off to talk about how to A/B test.
Great. Sounds
Is
good.
this me? Is this
Yes.
you?
This is you, I think. Yeah. I can speak to it. But
Awesome. So A/B testing, as Mutesi mentioned, you know, having 4 pieces of content to test or variables is going to be really great. So the way that you can think about testing is that in the first week, for example, you would have 4 variations of one piece. So let's say you want to test the headline in the first week. So you would have 4 different headlines for the same piece of content, the same audience, etc. You would take that winning headline and then you would apply it to an image. So then you would have the same headline and 4 different images. The third week, you would test a different variable, let's say a word. So with LinkedIn, we actually tested things like playbook versus guide, or toolkit versus playbook, and you can figure which one works best for that particular audience. And then you take that winning combination and you apply it across the rest of your campaign. Now, that doesn't mean stop A/B testing. It just means that you can apply that across the rest of your the duration of that particular campaign. So that's one way to think about how you go about A/B testing, is that you just do it in stages. And when you see this, when you actually take this approach to a staged A/B test, you can see that performance significantly increases. So at the beginning, the front part of this graph, we see that there's not a whole lot of A/B testing going on. Once they start this methodic way of A/B testing, their CTRs increase significantly with this, this really strategic approach. So that's a really great way of A/B testing. And as Matusi was going through, there's a lot of different ways to A/B test. So just making sure that you test the things that matter to you, and then you get that right combination in place. So to recap, we have, for content, 1, leverage insights to understand the audiences that are visiting your site, what they're reading on social, and questions they're looking to answer. It's all about the insights here. And the better you understand your audience, the better your content is going to perform, and then also the better the content you're going to create. Adapting a full funnel approach and map content to the audience mindset. So really keeping in mind that audience first approach to all of your content strategy. And then finally, test new content formats like video and interactive content. And then with distribution, we want to make sure that we're creating and implementing a social media calendar in addition to the editorial calendar that you should hopefully have. And then consider all aspects when posting to a social feed. So image, copy, format. Always think about mobile first, making sure that you're creating that post and that imagery that resonates with the audience based on the social channel that they're on. And then finally, A/B testing. So A/B test, you can test everything from image to copy to calls to action to colors of the calls to action button. Pretty much everything you can A/B test. So make sure that you do that to see what resonates best with your audience. And then I think we have just a little bit of time left to answer some final questions, some of those burning questions out there.
Yes, let's do it. Okay. What would be an example of a successful campaign you guys have seen recently, and why did you choose that one specifically?
Successful content campaign. Marketo always puts out some really great stuff. They have really interesting content. They've got great posts. Their organic strategy is really great as well. So Marketo is a really good one. I think that I tend to go back to again and again.
Yeah, something for me, so previous to now, I was working on the professional services, and one of the images, and early on, I put a little plug in there, but Ernst & Young, they do some great content marketing, and one thing is that they're always consistent. So you know it's Ernst & Young, it has that weird yellow box thing.
I know, it's always black and yellow, yeah.
Yeah, and so you know that it's them, it's always thought leadership. They do use stock imagery, but then they overlay it sort of with like a film of black and then with some stats or quotes. So they're able to sort of repurpose that. So easy for anyone to probably create. So yeah, that would be sort of one that I would choose. And then from actually a B2C perspective, I was working with Volvo, and we do have a case study on our Marketing Solutions blog, but they leverage sponsor content and carousel ads, and they saw huge engagement, and they were part of our beta there. And they always perform well because they really speak to this audience in terms of like high value consumer. So that's another example.
That's actually a great segue because I have a question here. Is LinkedIn a good platform for B2C content marketing?
Oh my gosh, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
There was actually just a recent article that was released that was saying LinkedIn is the next B2C social platform. And they list all these reasons why, but you think about some of the things that, especially in today's world, the way that we buy and the way that we consume goods, we have a lot of like boxes, right? So subscription style retail is very big right now. Stitch Fix, Harry's, Trunk Club, et cetera, et cetera. And the LinkedIn audience is a great audience for that. It's business professionals. We're all super busy. We don't have time to shop. LinkedIn is a great place to advertise for those services. Absolutely. So, and then high consideration when you think about auto and a few others like home related. Retail is always really good too.
Yeah, we have some home, like the equivalent of like Zillow in Canada would use that as well. I definitely think that LinkedIn is a great platform for B2C. So especially the high consideration B2C, I think we keep coming back to this topic of we're humans too on LinkedIn. And one thing that will actually help those B2C buyers out there is we've just released like a new beta, and it's about interest-based buying. So not just having sort of that first-party data, what's on your profile, but actually what members are interested in. So once that's released, that's going to be huge for our B2C customers because that will, enable them to sort of target based off of like relevant behaviors they're seeing.
Great. We have a couple of questions about InMail. Do we have any best practices or strategies we can share for using InMail? I know we didn't really talk about that much today, but.
Yeah, so I love InMail as well. I love every product. So with InMail, I would say call to action in the subject line, absolutely. The body of the text, similar to what we're talking about sponsor content, we really want to keep it short and sweet. So add in a salutation at the beginning, a little tiny blurb, a couple bullet points as to why they should move forward, and then a call to action. It also has a big box on the right-hand side, so I would leverage that for those that are viewing it on desktop. It's a great product for webinars, events, lower funnel strategy. If you're using account-based marketing, I would definitely use InMail for that strategy. And when we run sponsored InMail in tandem with sponsor content, we actually see an uplift in our CTR. So it is good if you can run them. So a lot of my clients, what they'll do is they'll warm up the audience with sponsor content and then eventually have that call to action with sponsored InMail.
Okay, awesome. We've seen a lot of success too in driving registrations, especially with like higher value audiences as well. We've had a lot of success reaching the CMOs using InMail.
Yeah, and back to cars too, like they've done it for like test drives and stuff like that as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How long on average should you A/B test? We said around 3 weeks, right?
Until statistical relevance is met. So that depends on budget, audience. There's a lot of factors involved when it comes to A/B testing. So as long as you get to a point of, like I said, statistical relevance, that's when you can change out the next variation of your A/B test. So yeah, it kind of depends. I know that answer is terrible, but it does.
That's quite all right. Let's see. There was one other that I wanted to. Okay, so I'd be curious to just hear your opinions on this. Which is more important, quantity or quality? And I'm assuming they mean just content production in general.
Quality, 100% of the time.
Yeah. I think we're kind of experiencing like a content overload at the moment. As a content marketer, I feel overloaded by content sometimes. So yeah, I definitely would agree that it's all about quality and relevance.
Yes.
All right, we're almost at time, but not before I announce our winners. We're going home with a Rock Your Video box. So first place, we have Sean K. Second place, Eduardo M. And third place, Allison M. So your boxes will be in the mail. We hope that you enjoy using them and capture some really great content for your audience. Please, again, don't forget to take our lovely survey and tell us, give us feedback, tell us how we did, what could be more helpful next time. Thank you so much to my colleagues for being here today, and thank you for everyone who tuned in, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.